What's growing on, gardeners? February is here on the southeastern coast of North Carolina, and on today's video I'm going to show you how to make your blueberry plants produce like crazy in 5 easy steps. Let's get our plants off on the right foot so we have the best season ever.
If you're new to the channel, please subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and check out my Amazon store and Spreadshop links in the video description for everything I use in my garden and awesome custom apparel and gear.
Today's video will teach gardeners who already have blueberry plants planted in ground how to care for them to maximize their health, vigor, and productivity. If you have not yet planted blueberry plants and you are looking for guidance, I will link to a video both above and down in the video description that will teach you everything you need to know about selecting blueberries for your unique climate. The growing tips outlined in this video are best applied to your blueberry plants while they are still dormant or just beginning to emerge from dormancy in late winter, early spring. If you are watching this well into the growing season and your blueberry plants have already leafed out, budded, and are forming fruit, you still want to apply steps 1 and 5 no matter what time of the year it is. That being said, if you're in the midst of your growing season, bookmark this video and make sure that you follow these tips in the late winter, early spring to prep your blueberry plants next year. Step 1 is to remove all of the weeds around your blueberry bushes. Blueberry bushes are fairly shallow rooted. They don't have those deep roots that a big tree will have. So weeds actually are fairly competitive with blueberry plants, and having a lot of weeds growing around your plants can actually add up and partially outcompete them, and they will struggle to grow in the presence of lots of weeds. In addition, the weeds that we have growing around our blueberry plants will also compete with the blueberries for any fertilizer and the nutrients inside compost that we place. And we really don't want to waste our expensive fertilizer and precious compost on weeds, do we? If you are properly maintaining a mulch layer that is 3 to 4 inches thick around your blueberry bushes all year round like you should have minimal weed pressure. If this is you, all you really need to do is just take a hand rake and lightly rake around the mulch, and any weeds should easily come up, and then we can just bury these weeds that have been uprooted underneath a thick mulch layer later in the video. If you have more intense weed pressure, make sure you grab them and rip out any large weeds that are competing with your blueberry plants. Now our blueberry growing area has been made free of weeds, and we are ready to move on to step number 2. Step number 2 is to prune our blueberry plants. Now, while blueberry plants don't need nearly the amount of pruning that most of our fruit trees need, they do need a little bit of cleanup before they break bud for the new growing season. Specifically, we are going to target 3 things. We want to remove any dead or dying growth. We want to remove any conflicting growth that is growing into the center of the plant and kind of strangling itself out. And we do want to give it an overall balanced shape so it is well symmetric, because if the plant is off balance and a lot bigger on one side, it will prefer to add more growth to that side, and you'll have a really wonky looking plant over time. To prune our blueberry plants, we need 2 basic tools. We need a simple pair of bypass pruning shears. This will be to cut any kind of wood that is 1/2 inch in diameter or less. Most people will only need these, but if you have larger, more mature blueberry plants, it's a good idea to have a fine-toothed pruning saw or one of these Japanese pull saws in order to cut any wood greater than 1/2 inch in diameter. If you need tools like these, I will place direct links down to them in the video description. Now, ideally, you would want to prune your blueberry plants while they are still fully dormant, and you wouldn't want to wait until the buds begin to break like you see right here, but unfortunately, I am a little bit behind schedule. Ideally, I would have done this probably about 3 weeks ago before any of these buds formed. So please keep that in mind. If you are seeing bud formation like this, you still can prune, but you really need to get a move on. And in future years, remember, you should actually prune before this happens to your plants. Now, as I said, the first thing you want to do is you want to remove any dead or dying wood on the plants. And you know that it's dead or dying when it feels really hollow. You see how that snaps right off? Listen. That just cracks right off. This wood is, it's just old. So we're going to cut all of that off. You can also tell it's old because the wood is actually brown inside. There is no green. So we are going to search around the tree and prune off any dead or dying wood. And after we cut it off, we are going to break it up and drop it around the base of the tree as a mulch layer. The other thing we must do is prune out any conflicting branches that are growing into the center of the plant. We want to provide the plant with good airflow and an open center so we have good light penetration into the canopy of the bush. And this older plant has a lot of old conflicting growth that is growing into the center that we need to cut out. Now you will see that I opened up the center of the blueberry bush. In fact, you can actually see the branches that I cut off there and the branches that I cut off there. They were growing into the center of the plant, and I didn't want them. But other than that, you shouldn't have to prune much more on your blueberry bushes. The last bit of pruning you may want to consider is to shape the tree if it is very far out of balance and make it a little bit more symmetrical. But I caution you against doing this if you don't need to do it. I have a pretty good symmetry going on this bush, so aside from cutting out the dead growth and some branches that are really badly growing into the center, I don't really want to do anything more. And the reason why is if you look over your blueberry bushes, you will notice pretty easily that all of your buds are forming on the new wood that was formed last season. So if we go ahead and cut off all of that wood, we are not going to get any buds. It's very important that what we're really trying to accomplish right now is to just remove any dead growth or anything that is severely conflicting or correct any serious imbalance issues. Other than that, when it comes to pruning your blueberries, less is more. The only other time outside of this time of year that I'd consider pruning your blueberries is after you harvest them in May, June, or early July, depending on what your growing season is. You may want to consider shaping them again after you harvest them and then giving them more fertilizer to put new growth on and try to get some new growth to form new fruit wood for the following season. But I would only consider doing that if you have a long enough growing season where any wood that you grow in July and August has time to harden off before the frost and freezes start. So when it comes to growing your blueberries, make sure you're kind of conservative with the pruning, only remove the dead dieback stuff and the severe conflicts. You don't want to over prune or you will not get much fruit. Step number 3 will apply to most gardeners, and that is to acidify your soil. Blueberry plants like a really low pH, around 4.5 to 5.5. Neutral pH is 7, so a 4.5 to 5.5 pH is orders of magnitude less than neutral. And most people are not going to have a soil pH that acidic. Therefore, it is a good idea in most of our cases to add a soil acidifying agent. Now, many people out there will tell you that the only way you can truly acidify your soil properly is if you get a soil test, because how can you acidify your soil to the right amount if you don't know the pH that you're starting with? And while that is technically true, soil tests have only existed for a few generations, and we as a species have been good at agriculture for over 10,000 years. So we've been growing things for a very long time without any kind of soil testing. The way I prefer to do this is through the power of observation. Now look, if you are a commercial grower, soil testing is a great idea because you probably have an enormous fertilizer budget. So if you find out that your soil is very rich in potassium or phosphorus and you can cut how much potassium and phosphorus you're giving your plants, well, that can save you thousands of dollars. But for most backyard gardeners, soil testing doesn't make a lot of sense. If I were to perform soil testing, the cost would be my entire fertilizer budget for the year. It doesn't make sense in my case. So here is how I look at things. I am growing countless different species of things in my yard and garden, and nothing that I'm growing likes a pH anywhere near 4.5 to 5.5. Almost everything I'm growing like a neutral to a slightly acidic pH, somewhere in the 6 to 7 range. I have all kinds of figs, persimmons, an entire annual vegetable garden, citrus trees, avocado trees, apples, peaches, pawpaws, Asian pears, and everything is thriving. So that means that my soil pH has to be relatively neutral, or else these things wouldn't all be thriving. So therefore, it is very safe to say that I don't need a soil test to tell me that my soil is not acidic enough for what blueberries truly prefer. And for that reason, I need to add a soil acidifier to get them closer to the ideal pH. And in order to acidify our soil, I am going to use a natural product called elemental sulfur. These are natural sulfur prills that will be eaten by the microbiology in the soil. They will be decomposed and they will lower the pH of the soil as they decompose. So for that reason, you don't want to apply these until your soil is at least 55 degrees or warmer. You need the natural microbiology in the soil to be somewhat active. So if your soil is still ice cold, don't apply these just yet. Wait until you're at that 55 degree or more Fahrenheit temperature. If you don't want to use a product like this, you can go out and get yourself an organic fertilizer that is specifically made for acid-loving plants like Espoma Hollytone or some other high acidity fertilizer. All that is it is a fertilizer with sulfur added. So they have already done the work for you. I like to do these things separately because buying the products individually gives me more control over the situation, and you can fine-tune things more when you have a standalone product like this. If you're looking for elemental sulfur, it's pretty inexpensive. I will link to some down in the video description. Now, because this product is acidic, I'm going to put on a pair of latex or vinyl gloves to protect my hand. And to add it to our plants, we are going to use a scientific unit of measure called a handful. I'm going to place 2 handfuls in a ring around the root area of the plant, kind of like how you see here. It doesn't really take that much more than that. And my hands are pretty small, so if you have very large hands, you may only want to use 1 handful. Generally speaking, it's better to be conservative. That way you don't over-acidify your soil. You can always add more, but you can't take it away. You can lightly rub it in, but we are going to add a compost and mulch layer later in this video, and that will help bury it and help it break down. But just for the sake of making this video, let's lightly rub it in, and now we will go around to each plant and do the exact same thing. Step number 4 is to fertilize our blueberry bushes, and in order to do this, we are going to use an organic granular fertilizer. Now, in this video, I'm going to use Espoma Plant Tone, which is a 533 NPK, but anything around a 555 or a 444, something balanced where all 3 NPK numbers are relatively close together, is all you need. Now, like I said, if you want to skip a step, you can get a fertilizer that has sulfur added to it, specifically for acid-loving plants. So Espoma makes Hollytone. Different manufacturers sell fertilizers for blueberries, holly, azaleas, hydrangeas, things like that. They like a lower soil pH, so those fertilizers already have what you need to lower the pH of your soil for the blueberries. But because I broke this up into 2 separate steps, I am going to use a plain old all-purpose fertilizer since I already added the elemental sulfur. And just like with the elemental sulfur, we are going to use the scientific measure of a handful. It's going to take probably about 1.5 to 2 handfuls of fertilizer to give these plants what they need. And this is probably the only fertilizer I'm going to give them throughout the entire year, unless I decide later that I need more growth on my blueberry plants because I want more fruiting wood for the next season. Step number 5 just may be the most important step of this entire video, and that is to add a compost and mulch layer to all of your blueberry bushes. This step applies no matter what time of year it is, no matter when you are watching this video. If you haven't done this yet at some point this year, make sure you do this, because there is possibly no more important thing for virtually everything that you're growing. Any fruiting bush, landscaping bush, tree, fruit tree, they all want a thick layer of compost and mulch. In fact, the only tree that I know of that doesn't like a heavy layer of organic matter decomposing under it at all times is maybe a mango tree. That's about it. These 2 products are going to be the secret to success growing most things in ground. Now, what we are going to do is we are going to take a fully composted manure product and add a 2 to 3 inch layer around the bottom of all of our blueberry bushes, spread out in a circle roughly 2 feet in diameter around all of your blueberry bushes. And the way we are going to verify that the compost is fully composted is we are going to take a handful of it and smell it. It should basically just smell like grass. It shouldn't have any kind of odor to it, especially if it is a manure-based compost. If it does have a manure odor, it has not composted fully, and generally you wouldn't want to use it uncomposted, but because right now it's February, it's so early in the year, you actually could apply it around your bushes because it's not going to endanger your crops, since you won't be harvesting anything off of these until May or June, and by then it will be fully composted. After we place our compost, we are going to go ahead and top that in about 3 inches of a natural mulch. And that is the important thing right here. We want to use a natural mulch. We don't want to use a dyed mulch. Dyed mulch is usually ground up construction supplies or other trash wood that they artificially dye to look like real wood. It is not. We want to use either a bark mulch like pine bark nuggets or shredded hardwood bark. We want to use a wood mulch like wood chips, cedar, cypress, redwood, or we can use a natural mulch like wheat straw, hay, as long as you're sure it's not chemically treated with herbicides. You can use pine straw. You can use grass clippings from your lawn if you haven't treated it with any chemicals. All of those things make fine mulches. Chopped up leaves, it's all good. I'm going to use mini pine bark nuggets because I think this is one of the best affordable mulches for blueberries because your pine bark nuggets are mildly acidic when they break down. Pine straw is not. Pine straw breaks down to be roughly neutral, but your pine bark nuggets are mildly acidic, making them a great addition to growing your blueberries. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around to each bush and I'm going to add a roughly 18 to 24 inch in diameter ring of compost, 2 to 3 inches deep around all of them. And I'm going to use that compost to bury the fertilizer and the elemental sulfur that we just added, because that compost is going to add natural bacteria that is going to help assist in the decomposition of those amendments. After I place the compost, I'm then going to follow behind it and I'm going to add that 3-inch layer of the natural mulch. I'm using pine bark nuggets, but you can use whatever you can source affordably as long as it is natural. After you place all of your mulch, the last thing I recommend is that you wet down the whole area. This will help lock the mulch into place and help it settle, so if you get a windy day, all of your dry mulch won't just blow away. In addition, this will also help facilitate the breakdown of the organic fertilizer and the sulfur pearls that we just placed in the soil. They will not decompose if your soil is dry. So if you moisten everything very well, that will help facilitate their decomposition more quickly. And now we are finished. All of our blueberries have been weeded, pruned, acidified, fertilized, composted, and mulched, and everything looks beautiful. While I was filming this video, I also made sure to prune and fertilize my large feijoa tree as well. I have lots of the prunings down at the bottom right here. One of the best ways to fertilize your larger trees is good old-fashioned chop and drop. And everything looks beautiful. Now keep in mind that there is no guarantee that all of this mulch will last and protect your trees all summer long. This is going to break down as the year progresses. So if you start to see lots of decomposition and you start seeing bare soil or compost and you see weed germination, you are going to want to add more mulch. It is important that you keep a 3 to 4 inch layer of mulch present all throughout the year. And if you do that, the end result will be very happy blueberry bushes, very happy trees in general. Just look at these. These are all flush with blooms, and I think we're going to have a pretty good season. Those 5 easy blueberry growing tips will help maximize your success at having an incredible blueberry harvest. So everybody, I sure hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and please ring that notification bell so you're notified when I release more videos like these. For any of the products that I featured in this video for growing blueberries, I place direct links down in the video description to them for your convenience. For everything else I use in real life in my garden, they are all linked in my Amazon storefront in the video description. So expand the video description, click on the Amazon storefront link, and you'll see everything I use in real life. And while you're down there, please check out my spread shop for custom merch if you want to support the channel. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see all of you again on the next video.
Oh, ow, dude. That hurt. What are you doing? You hear all those birds singing, Dale? Do you hear those birds? Look. Look at those birds up in the tree singing. They like the cold. They think it's a beautiful morning. What about you, buddy? You just want to go inside, right? You want to come in? Oh yeah, he's had enough. He's like, forget this white fluffy stuff. Don't worry, Dale. It'll be gone in about 2 days. 2 more days, it's going to warm up. Here, buddy. Come on, let me wipe off your paws. They're all wet.